Alright guys, we are back, and today we are going to do another direct comparison for the new remakes from MX vs ATV Legends. Today's video will have Capital City and Savannah. And it's going to be a bit different because, yes, you're going to see the original track here at the beginning, and then we'll get the direct side-by-side comparison between the original and the remake. But then we have a third version for both Capital City and Savannah. We're going to show you that as well. So, jumping into it, this is MX vs ATV Untamed and the original Capital City track. Now, one thing I'm going to point out, you can see the Capital City logo there in front of us. That logo is actually on the opposite side of the stadium in Legends, right? I'm not sure why they chose to do it that way. Not a big deal, but one difference. The tracks themselves are very, very similar. Now, the gameplay I tried to get you here, this isn't a perfect lap by any means. I don't play this game very much anymore. It was fun to come back to it, but it was kind of tough. I struggled. It is a single stick control game and has a really big preload. The preload's a bit different than it is in MX vs ATV Legends. The concept is the same, but I kept missing it. So I tried my best to get a clean, decent lap in, and mostly for comparison's sake, so that the two videos were pretty close. And I tried to do the same or similar lines for both games. It doesn't come out exact, but it's pretty close, and I think you can get a good idea of how well they did with the remake. So here we switch over. We have Untamed on the left and Legends on the right, and the timing is kind of the same problem I had with Alive, that they didn't match up. So it was tough. At some point you will see them match up, but surprisingly, MX vs ATV Legends is a fast game. A very, very fast game. I thought Legends would be closer to Untamed, because Untamed plays really, really fast too, and you can hit some huge lines where you can get through rhythm sections really quickly. And I know I said that the laps I got weren't perfect, but it wouldn't have mattered. I do believe that Legends is just a much faster game. So trying to set it up was a bit difficult, but here we go. We have, so far the tracks are virtually identical. The color, the graphics obviously are a bit different, but this part of the track is where the biggest difference was, because in Untamed you kind of wheel tap preloaded off of that first triple in, and so hitting that was a bit different in Untamed versus Legends. And then this back rhythm section, I don't hit the same. I know I took a different line here, but it's similar. I mean, you can basically do kind of the same thing in Legends versus Untamed, but again, it is a remake, so they scaled it to MX versus ATV Legends to make it play with the way the physics work in that game, right? So it isn't going to be exact. The layout, the jumps, all that's the same, but the way it plays is going to be a bit different. And then here we switch over to the third version. This would be Atlanta from MX vs ATV All Out. Now, this is just a stock base track in the game, and I was trying to remember what track it was. I was in the comments. Somebody told me it was Atlanta. I talked to you. I'm sorry I forget your name, but they were right. It is Atlanta, and it is just a stock track in the game. And it very much is like inspired by Capital City. It isn't exact. You saw some differences already. We'll probably go over them when we come back to it. Like, for instance, this section is just like 3 tables instead of the way it is in the original. This is pretty similar, but it is a bit different. Just kind of the way the jumps aren't the same. And then we have a small triple before the Supercross triple, and then the back rhythm section is different. Not like completely different, but we don't have a table, so the way you hit this is just not the same. But the layout is the same. The amount of jumps are a bit different. Where the jumps are pretty much the same, but they're not the same jump. So it isn't exact. It's more of a reimagination. It's a reimagined version of Capital City, but it most definitely is modeled after Capital City. So they did a great job on all these versions of the track, but in MX vs ATV, the MX vs ATV Alive throwback tracks, I felt like they did just as good as they did in the original game. In this, I feel like I personally enjoy the original Capital City better. I think that track was made for that game. It was designed for that game, and it just works so well with the way MX vs. ATV Untamed plays. Now, that's not to say they didn't do a great job with the remake. They did, and that would be my second favorite version of the track, and then MX vs. ATV All Out would probably be my third favorite, so my least favorite, but it was still really good. And it isn't because it's not exact or whatever, it just is my third favorite version. One, because the Supercross triples in MX vs. ATV All Out were like tiny. They were always so tiny. But it was good. It was a really good track and really good design, and they did a great job throwing back to Capital City, but it just wasn't my favorite. So there you have the 3 versions of Capital City in 3 different MX vs. ATV games. Now we switch over to OG MX vs. ATV Unleashed, and we have Savannah. Now, we discussed it, we talked about it, you guys talked about it a bit, that it is a bit disappointing that Savannah was the track from MX vs. ATV Unleashed, that there were so many great indoor, outdoor tracks they could have done, and they chose to do Savannah. Kind of boring track, but it's what they chose to do, so we're gonna jump into MX vs. ATV Unleashed and check it out. So we have 2 laps here because it is a very short track, and maybe you need a refresher on how it was or whatever. One thing that I always forget, I guess, because I don't play the game very often anymore, even though I played it a ton back in the day, is just how wide the tracks are. I mean, these are early games, and nobody really had any complaints about it. Now, if a track isn't exactly 1-to-1 scale, people complain it's so wide. Well, I think people forget just how wide tracks were back in the day. But we're about ready to switch over to the side-by-side comparison, and we're going to have MX vs. ATV Unleashed on the left side, and then MX vs. ATV Legends on the right side. So it's kind of a reoccurring theme. Legends plays very, very fast, and so it was kind of hard to match the video up exact, but it's pretty close. And again, the biggest differences, well, some of the differences are just the colors, the graphics, all that stuff. The stadium's a bit different, but the biggest difference for me was that the Legends remake felt a bit congested. It felt congested. Things were really close together. They weren't spread apart as far as they were in the original. So they did a good job, but it just felt like everything was way too close together, in my opinion. And then here we have the third version of Savannah. This is MX vs. ATV Supercross Encore, and Savannah, it is called Savannah, and it was sold as a DLC to a Supercross track pack. So, the track is a bit different. The layout is virtually the same, but the jumps and stuff are a bit different because they did have to... Well, they didn't have to, but it's more similar to MX vs. ATV All Out. It's kind of a reimagined version of Unleashed, so, whatever. But it works really good in the game. We had a double going into that corner. We have a wheel tap or a triple, but then here we have the double Supercross triple, hit the 90. Now, we have a double triple here, and that should just be a big mound with some whoops on it. This should just be a double into the Supercross triple, but it's actually a quad double, or a triple, and then the Supercross triple, and then this should just be some small whoops, but they decided to split it and then put a table, and then instead of having one big banked corner, you have 2 90s with a table in between. So the track is a bit different, but they did a great job with the way it plays. So if I had to say what my favorite version was, I would still say the original. MX vs. ATV Unleashed did it the best. It was the first version, and it was... I don't know if it was the most fun, but it was the best in my opinion. Now, with Supercross, I would say is my second favorite, not because I love Supercross Encore, but because the track was fun. It is not exact, I know, but it was fun. And then Legends would actually be my least favorite, and it was done okay, but it just needed to be spaced out a bit more. For instance, when we get to it here, I'll show you where we have, okay, so we hit the double, but it's a triple here. Having this double in Legends, it just was so compact. I feel like it needed to be spaced out. Everything needed to be extended a bit more. Maybe not the Supercross triples so much, but just the way the track felt too congested. But let me know in the comments what you guys think, what your favorite versions were for both tracks, and what tracks you wish they would have put in for this DLC. But you guys and girls are absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for the support on the channel lately. It really does mean a lot. And until the next video, take it easy.